My friends, the Pittsburgh Steelers may be only a few weeks away from training camp, but one of the biggest questions surrounding this roster has nothing to do with star power. It is about whether the front office believes the current roster is complete enough to compete at a high level, or if there are still a few strategic additions that need to be made before the team arrives in Latrobe. Right now, Pittsburgh finds itself in an interesting position. The roster appears much stronger than it did at this point last year, and there is a growing belief that the organization could simply move forward with the players already under contract. The team has adequate starting talent across the board, and there is also the reality that Pittsburgh currently has very limited salary cap flexibility. With only a small amount of cap space available, any move from this point forward would likely have to be a low-cost signing rather than a blockbuster acquisition. That reality makes the right guard position one of the most fascinating situations to watch as training camp approaches. The Steelers currently have several options competing for the job, including Spencer Anderson, Brock Hoffman, and rookie Gennings Dunker. While the organization clearly hopes that Dunker eventually becomes the long-term answer at the position, relying on a rookie from day one is always a gamble. Training camp will be the first true test of whether he is ready to take over such an important role immediately, and that raises an uncomfortable question. If Gennings Dunker is not ready, can Pittsburgh confidently hand the job to Spencer Anderson or Brock Hoffman for an entire season? Neither player has proven himself as a full-time NFL starter. That concern becomes even more significant when you consider the importance of protecting a veteran quarterback and maintaining consistency along the offensive line. One weak spot in protection can disrupt an entire offense, especially in critical moments. Because of that uncertainty, several veteran names remain worth discussing. One of the most intriguing possibilities is James Daniels. Steelers fans know him well. Daniels was a dependable presence on Pittsburgh's offensive line before injuries dramatically altered the trajectory of his career. Consecutive season-ending injuries have left him searching for another opportunity, but when healthy, Daniels has consistently shown that he can perform at a high level in the NFL. What makes the possibility interesting is not just familiarity. Daniels already has experience working within the Steelers' offensive structure and alongside players currently on the roster. At only 28 years old, he is not dealing with the age concerns that typically surround available free agents this late in the offseason. The biggest obstacle is health. The biggest advantage is cost. Because of the injuries, Daniels would likely come at a very affordable price. For a Steelers team looking for value rather than headlines, that kind of move fits perfectly with the current financial situation. Another veteran who deserves attention is Kevin Zeitler. Unlike Daniels, Zeitler brings years of experience and consistency. Even at this stage of his career, he continues to grade as a productive player and has avoided the dramatic decline that often affects offensive linemen in their later years. If Pittsburgh is looking for a veteran who could immediately stabilize the position without requiring a lengthy adjustment period, Zeitler may be one of the safest options available. There are also other names that remain on the market, including Mekhi Becton and Greg Van Roten, both of whom bring starting experience and versatility. While neither would generate major excitement among the fan base, both represent experienced alternatives if the Steelers decide they need additional insurance before week 1. What is becoming increasingly clear is that the organization is entering a crucial evaluation period. Training camp will not simply determine who starts at right guard. It may determine whether Pittsburgh feels confident enough to avoid spending valuable cap space altogether. If Donkor impresses and one of the veteran backups exceeds expectations, the Steelers may decide that no addition is necessary. But if questions remain after the first few weeks of camp, the pressure to bring in a veteran presence could increase significantly, and the offensive line is not the only area where Pittsburgh's decision makers are keeping a close eye on the roster. There is another position group where a familiar face could potentially return, a player who already knows the system, understands the culture, and may represent an immediate upgrade in a role the Steelers still have not completely settled heading into training camp. Could Pittsburgh actually consider bringing back a former defensive leader to strengthen the linebacker room before the season begins? The linebacker position may not generate the same headlines as quarterback or wide receiver, but it could quietly become one of the most important storylines of the Steelers preseason. As things currently stand, Patrick Queen is expected to remain the centerpiece of the defense. He will likely continue handling major communication responsibilities while serving as the leader of the linebacker group. Behind him, there is growing optimism about Peyton Wilson taking on a significantly larger role. The athleticism, speed, and upside are all there, and many within the organization appear excited about what his expanded responsibilities could mean for the defense. However, when you look beyond those names, questions begin to emerge. The The Steelers have depth options available, but if the goal is to maximize the defense's effectiveness on early downs, there may still be room for improvement. Last season, Malik Harrison filled an important role as a run defender. He had moments where he made impressive plays against the run, but there was also a recurring issue that opposing offenses frequently targeted: pass coverage. Whenever offenses were able to isolate Harrison in coverage situations, problems followed. While his physicality against the run remained valuable, the limitations in coverage reduced his overall impact. Because of that, the possibility of adding a veteran linebacker who could provide a more complete skill set remains an interesting discussion, and that brings us to a name Steelers fans know extremely well: Elandon Roberts. Few players earned as much respect from Pittsburgh fans during his time with the organization. Roberts built a reputation as a tough, physical, no-nonsense linebacker who consistently delivered against the run. Even now, despite remaining unsigned, he is still viewed as one of the better run-defending linebackers available on the market. What makes Roberts particularly intriguing is that he would not need a lengthy adjustment period. He already understands many of the concepts utilized within this defensive system. He already has relationships with players in the locker room. He already knows the expectations that come with wearing black and gold. For a team seeking affordable veteran help, those factors matter. The financial side is important as well. Pittsburgh is not in a position to hand out expensive contracts, which means players willing to sign for a modest deal immediately become more attractive. Roberts fits that profile perfectly. There are other names available too. Bobby Okereke is another veteran who could attract interest. Although he struggled at times last season and experienced noticeable regression, his overall body of work throughout his career remains impressive. He has been a productive starter, a respected leader, and someone capable of contributing in multiple areas of the game. The question is whether Pittsburgh believes his recent struggles were simply a temporary setback or evidence of a longer-term decline. There are also players such as Jermaine Pratt and Denzel Perryman. Both are known primarily for their work against the run. Both bring experience. Both understand how to play physically. However, neither completely solves the coverage concerns that have become increasingly important in today's NFL. That reality is why Roberts continues to stand out among the available options. The Steelers are not necessarily searching for a superstar. They are searching for reliable depth and situational impact. Roberts checks many of those boxes. But linebacker is not the only defensive position where Pittsburgh could still use additional help. The safety room presents another fascinating situation. On paper, the starting duo appears set. Deshaun Elliott and Jaquan Brisker are expected to handle the majority of starting duties, while Jalen Ramsey provides incredible versatility by being capable of moving into multiple roles depending on the defensive package. The problem emerges when you begin examining the depth behind them. Darnell Savage, Sebastian Castro, and Robert Spears-Jennings provide options, but there are legitimate questions about whether that group offers enough proven experience if injuries strike during the season. And Steelers fans do not need to be reminded how quickly a secondary can become vulnerable when depth is tested. Last year provided a perfect example of how injuries can force players into uncomfortable roles and create challenges throughout the defense. Pittsburgh learned firsthand how valuable quality safety depth can be. That is why several veteran names remain worth monitoring. One particularly interesting option is Jamal Adams. While Adams is no longer viewed as the dominant player he once was earlier in his career, he found success operating in a hybrid role closer to the line of scrimmage. Rather than functioning as a traditional deep safety, he showed that he can still impact games as a versatile defender capable of contributing against both the run and short passing game. Given his familiarity with concepts similar to those being installed in Pittsburgh, he represents a logical depth candidate. Another veteran who deserves consideration is Donovan Wilson. Wilson brings years of starting experience and would provide an immediate upgrade in terms of proven depth. Even if he is no longer at his athletic peak, he remains a player capable of stepping into meaningful snaps if injuries occur. Then there are names like Jordan Poyer, Xavier Woods, and Jimmy Ward. Each brings veteran experience. Each has started games in this league. Each could potentially provide valuable insurance for a team that hopes not to repeat the depth problems that have surfaced in previous seasons. What makes all of this so fascinating is that the Steelers are not dealing with glaring weaknesses. Instead, they are dealing with strategic decisions. Do they trust the roster they currently have? Or do they use their remaining resources to strengthen a few key positions before training camp fully begins? And perhaps the most interesting debate of all involves an area that directly affects Aaron Rodgers and the passing game. Because while the Steelers have assembled an intriguing receiver group, there is one major question hanging over that room heading into the season: the wide receiver receiver room may ultimately become the most closely watched position group once training camp begins, because it sits at the intersection of two very important factors: young talent and Aaron Rodgers' expectations. On paper, Pittsburgh has assembled a group that offers a healthy balance of experience and upside. DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman provide the veteran presence. Both are proven NFL receivers, capable of handling major workloads. Their experience should give the offense stability, especially during critical moments of the season. Behind them, however, the Steelers are asking younger players to take significant steps forward. Jeremy Bernard arrives with versatility that coaches love. He can line up inside, outside, and even move around the formation in creative ways. Roman Wilson remains one of the most intriguing players on the roster because there is a belief that his role could look very different from what fans saw previously. The expectation is that Wilson will spend more time operating as a true slot receiver, a role that may better suit his strengths. If that adjustment works, Pittsburgh could unlock a player many fans still believe has much more to offer than what has been shown so far. The challenge is simple: potential is not production. Neither Bernard nor Wilson has proven himself over an extended period at the NFL level. That uncertainty becomes more significant when Aaron Rodgers enters the equation. Throughout his career, Rodgers has consistently demonstrated a preference for experienced receivers. It is not necessarily about favoritism, it is about trust. Rodgers operates on timing, anticipation, and precision. He often throws the football before a receiver has even completed a break in the route. That level of execution requires both players to see the field exactly the same way. Veteran receivers tend to earn Rodgers' trust faster because they understand route adjustments, defensive leverage, and the subtle details that separate successful passing offenses from inconsistent ones. That reality creates an interesting possibility. If Rodgers develops confidence in Bernard and Wilson during training camp, the Steelers may feel no need whatsoever to add another receiver. But if communication issues emerge, if timing becomes inconsistent, or if the young receivers struggle to gain his confidence, pressure could quickly build to pursue a veteran addition. Several names remain available. DeAndre Hopkins